Right. So today we're going to take a deep dive into something I think is pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking about the golf swing of Tiger Woods.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not just talking about watching it like on YouTube or whatever.
Right.
We're really trying to understand like the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And we've got this really cool report from Sportsbox AI.
Uh-huh.
And it really breaks down his swing with like incredible detail.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing what they can do with AI and sports these days. It's really
I know.
changing the game.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we'll get into some of the specifics of the report in a second, but I think what's so interesting about this is it's like having X-ray vision into one of the most iconic swings in golf history.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, who hasn't watched Tiger just crush a drive and been like, how does he do that?
Yeah.
So we're going to try to answer that question today.
I think we can get pretty close.
Yeah, and you know what's cool is this isn't just for like super golf nerds. I mean, you don't have to be, a scratch golfer to appreciate what Tiger Woods does on the golf course.
No, not at all.
So I think there's something here for everyone today.
Absolutely. And one of the things that makes it so approachable is the way they break it down. In the report, they use these things called percentiles.
Okay.
And basically what that does is it compares Tiger's swing to other PGA Tour pros.
Gotcha.
So, instead of just saying, oh, he rotates fast, we'll know if he's faster than 80% of the pros or 95%, you get the idea.
Right.
So it gives you a really clear picture of where he stacks up against the best of the best.
Okay, that makes total sense. So higher the percentile, basically, the better he's doing that particular thing.
Exactly.
Compared to other golfers.
Yep.
Okay, but let's back up for a second and just start with like the basics.
Okay.
What makes Tiger's swing so special in the first place?
Well, I mean, you just think about his career, right? Decades at the top of the sport. I mean, that level of consistency has to come from somewhere, and a lot of it is that swing.
Right.
We're talking about a foundation built for both power and accuracy. It's not just one or the other. And it's been honed over years and years and years of practice.
Right, so there's like a real science to it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's jump into the report then, because it starts right off the bat talking about this thing called pelvis lift. And I have to say, like, I've never really thought about my pelvis doing much of anything in golf.
Well, yeah, it's not something that, is immediately obvious when you watch someone swing.
Right.
But it's incredibly important.
Okay.
The pelvis is like the engine of your swing. And Tiger's pelvic drop, which is how far down his pelvis moves during the swing, is 3.6 inches.
Okay.
Which puts him in the 90th percentile. Yeah, so he's outperforming 90% of other pros in how much his pelvis drops down during the swing. And that drop sets up the lift, which is that upward motion of the pelvis, and that helps generate a ton of power and consistency.
Okay, so it's like not just about turning my shoulders, it's this whole lower body thing I've been ignoring.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, and the report says his lift is also really impressive. It's in the 79th percentile.
Yeah, so he's using his lower body incredibly well to power his swing.
Okay, this is like blowing my mind a little bit. I'm already rethinking my entire approach here.
It's a game changer.
Okay, so then we get to this thing called slide in transition, and the report says that Tiger's chest slides forward 1.5 inches, and his pelvis slides forward 2.5 inches during his backswing. I'm trying to picture this in my head, and it seems totally counterintuitive, like you're sliding forward while you're winding up to hit the ball.
Right, but you see this in all the elite golfers.
Really?
Yeah, this forward movement, especially in the pelvis, actually helps to build momentum.
Okay.
Think of it like a coil being compressed. That stored energy then explodes into the downswing, adding a ton of power and accuracy.
Okay, so like he's loading up the spring.
Exactly, and the data shows that Tiger is fantastic at this.
Yeah, his pelvic slide puts him in the 89th percentile.
Yeah, he's really maximizing that movement.
Okay, so we got this powerful pelvic movement. We got this slide that's loading up energy. Now, I'm curious about his arm speed because I always assumed that was like the key to hitting the ball far.
Sure.
But the report says that Tiger actually has a relatively low lead arm swing speed.
That's right.
So what's going on there?
Well, this is one of those aha moments. It turns out raw arm speed isn't everything.
Okay.
There's this thing called the wrist speed gain factor.
Okay.
And Tiger's is 2.55, which is ridiculously high.
All right, so even though his arms aren't swinging super fast, he's making up for it with like insane wrist action.
Exactly. Think of it like cracking a whip.
Good.
You don't need to move the handle fast to get the tip moving at incredible speed.
Right.
That's what Tiger's doing. He's efficiently transferring that energy from his arm to the club shaft through his wrists.
So it's all about that transfer.
It's all about efficiency.
Wow, that makes so much sense. And the report says that leads to a shaft speed of 2,353 degrees per second,
Yeah,
which eventually results in a clubhead speed of 119 miles per hour.
it's amazing.
No wonder he crushes it.
It all comes down to that efficient transfer of energy. He's like a finely tuned machine, maximizing every little bit of power he generates.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
We got the powerful pelvic movement, the slide that loads up energy, and then this whip-like wrist action that transfers it all to the club.
And that's just the beginning.
There's more.
Oh, yeah, we've only scratched the surface here. There's a ton more to unpack. We haven't even touched on his rotation, his release, and a bunch of other factors that all contribute to that legendary swing.
Okay, I am definitely hooked now.
Good.
So let's take a closer look at these other elements of Tiger's swing and see what else I learn.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've seen how Tiger uses his pelvis and that forward slide to generate power. But what about the rotation? I always hear about how important hip rotation is in golf.
Yeah, you're right. Rotation is key. The report actually dives into this with something called rotational ROM, which stands for a range of motion.
Okay,
So it's basically how much Tiger's able to turn his body during the swing.
gotcha. So more rotation equals more power, right?
Not necessarily. It's more about finding the right amount of rotation for your body and your swing style.
Okay.
Too much rotation can actually lead to inconsistency.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly.
So where does Tiger fall on this?
Well, the report breaks down his rotation into a few different measurements, but the one that I think is most interesting, his shaft speed.
Okay.
Because ultimately that's what's driving the ball. How fast that club shaft is moving.
Right.
And his shaft speed is in the 81st percentile.
Okay. So even though he might not have like the biggest turn in the world, he's still making it count.
Exactly. It's all about how well he coordinates his movements.
Yeah. Now, speaking of coordinating movements, let's talk about the release.
Okay.
This is where things get really crucial.
Right. Yeah, the release sounds like it's make or break.
It is.
It's that moment when you actually unleash all that built-up energy and send the ball flying, right?
It's about timing and sequencing, getting everything to fire in the right order.
Okay.
And the report actually breaks the release down even further, looking at things like lead wrist angle, wrist release percent, and, we've talked about wrist speed gain factor.
Okay, so they really measured everything.
They did.
All right, so let's start with lead wrist angle. What is that?
So imagine your left hand on the club for a right-handed golfer.
Okay.
Lead wrist angle is basically the angle between the back of your hand and your forearm when the club shaft is parallel to the ground during your downswing.
Okay, so it's how much my wrist is bent at a certain point.
Exactly.
And why does that even matter?
Well, it matters a lot because if you have too much bend in your wrist, you're going to lose power.
And if you have too little bend, the club face is going to open up, which can lead to a slice.
Right.
So you got to find that sweet spot, between control and power. And Tiger's lead wrist angle is in the 43rd percentile.
Okay.
So he's right there in that sweet spot.
So he's not just like letting his wrist go willy-nilly. There's a specific angle he's trying to hit.
Exactly. He's very precise with his movements.
Okay, so what about wrist release percent?
So that measures how much your wrists unhinge during the downswing.
Okay.
And a higher percentage usually means a more powerful release.
Okay.
And Tiger's is at 37%, which puts him in the 53rd percentile.
Okay, that's pretty good. But I'm remembering that his wrist speed gain factor was like in the 100th percentile.
Right.
So he's not necessarily unhinging his wrists a ton, but he's still generating incredible speed.
Precisely. Remember that whip analogy?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about how much you unhinge, it's about the timing and the speed of that unhinging.
Right.
And that's what separates Tiger from the pack. He's got this incredible ability to time his wrist action perfectly.
Okay, let's talk more about that wrist speed gain factor because it's come up a couple times now and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what it actually means.
Sure. So basically it's a comparison between how fast your wrists are moving versus how fast your arms are moving during the downswing.
Okay.
So it tells you how much you're boosting your hand speed through that wrist action.
So it's like a multiplier.
Exactly. The higher the number, the more you're amplifying that speed.
Okay, and Tiger's is 2.55, which is just bonkers.
Yeah. He's basically squeezing every ounce of power he can out of his wrists. And this is why you see some older golfers who might not have the strongest swings still hit the ball really far.
Interesting.
Because they've mastered that whip-like wrist action.
Okay, that's incredible.
It's
It makes me want to go out and just practice my wrist snaps right now.
a good drill.
But before I run off to the driving range, what else can we learn from this report? We haven't even gotten to the horizontals and verticals sections yet.
Oh, yeah, those are good ones. Those sections give us even more insight into Tiger's swing. We'll explore them in detail when we come back.
Man, we've been digging deep into this Sportsbox AI report on Tiger Woods' swing.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly amazed by how much like science and data goes into something I always thought was just, natural talent.
It's true. People often underestimate the work and the just incredible understanding of the body that goes into,
Right.
even the most seemingly effortless athletic feats.
Yeah, Tiger's swing is like a perfect example of that.
For
He's
sure.
taken these like natural gifts and just honed them to perfection through, years and years of practice.
Yeah,
And this report like really lays it all out.
it does.
But before we get too carried away, I want to come back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
You said that there's something to be learned here for like all golfers, not just, the pros.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the most important takeaways from this report.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Well, you don't need to have Tiger's swing to benefit from understanding the principles behind it.
Okay.
Take that risk-speed gain factor, for instance.
Right.
We might not all get to the 100th percentile, but just being aware of how much power you can generate with your wrists
Right.
can make a big difference in your game.
So instead of just like trying to muscle the ball with my arms,
Right.
I should be thinking about like snapping my wrists through the swing.
Exactly. Think about cracking a whip.
Yeah.
It's all about transferring energy efficiently, and that's what Tiger does so well. He's not just swinging hard, he's swinging smart.
Okay, and it's not just the wrists, right?
Sure.
I mean, we talked about the pelvis, the slide and transition, the release.
Uh-huh.
It's like a chain reaction, with
Yeah.
each element contributing to the overall power and accuracy of the swing.
That's a great way to put it. It's a holistic approach. You can't just focus on one aspect
Right.
and expect to see major improvements.
It's about understanding how all these pieces fit together. So even if we can't replicate Tiger's swing exactly,
Right.
we could still apply these principles to our own game.
Absolutely.
Maybe we won't be winning any Masters tournaments, but
Right.
we can definitely shave a few strokes off our score.
For sure. And I think that's the beauty of this kind of analysis. It demystifies something that can seem incredibly complex.
Yeah.
It breaks it down into these manageable pieces, and it shows you, the levers you can pull to actually improve your own game.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest takeaway you think our listeners should keep in mind from all
Yeah. I'd say it's the importance of efficiency and understanding your own body. Tiger swing isn't just about brute force.
this? Right.
It's about maximizing the power he generates by optimizing every movement.
Yeah.
And that's something we can all strive for, no matter our skill level.
Really well said. It's
Yeah.
been an amazing journey into like the mechanics of one of the most iconic swings in golf history.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We've learned about pelvic lifts, slides, wrist snaps,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of other things I never thought I'd be so interested in.
It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, well, hopefully our listeners have gained a new appreciation for the science behind the sport.
I hope so.
So next time you're on the course,
Yeah.
think about those principles we discussed today.
Uh-huh.
Think about how you can use your body more efficiently to generate power and control.
You might surprise yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe you'll surprise yourself with how much you can improve.
Absolutely. Golf is a game of constant learning and improvement.
Right.
Even Tiger Woods is still finding ways to refine his swing.
So true. So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep learning.
Yeah.
You never know what you might discover.
Well said.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the swing of Tiger Woods. Thanks for joining us.